Educator Barnes, and welcome to our Dual Language Immersion series for Keep Indiana Learning. This series will focus on dual language immersion programs that are happening across our state of Indiana. Today, I have with me Paul Ketcham, who is the Superintendent of Batesville Community School Corporation. Paul, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Shante. Thank you for the opportunity to connect with you.
So could you tell us a little bit about when you decided that a dual language immersion program was needed in Batesville, Indiana?
Yeah, so actually, when I came to Batesville in 2017, I inherited the dual language immersion. It had been in practice for 1 year, and it started in 2016, and it was a 50-50 model. And again, I won't get too far in the weeds, but basically the students spent half their day in the English language with an English-speaking teacher, half their day immersed in Mandarin language with a native Mandarin-speaking teacher. So that model started in 2016, and believe it or not, those kindergarten students, that initial cohort, are currently seventh graders. So where has the time gone?
So as you say, you inherited this program. How have you been able to grow this program under your tenure in Batesville?
Well, I knew as a former high school teacher that foreign language is tough to learn as you get older. And high school students, foreign languages sometimes are almost like a social studies where you're learning more about cultures than necessarily the language. And research clearly says the best time to learn language is when your brain is developing as a 5 and 6 year old. So my credit to my predecessors, they did a lot of research base and found out that when you expose children to multiple language, or they become bilingual and biliterate, their brain develops a little differently. Their synapses are still connecting, and they kind of learn problem solving skills, and it's easier for them to learn a language at an earlier age. And also, instead of just 2 or 3 or 4 years of exposing the language, by starting in kindergarten, they can be exposed to that language over 12 years, their entire K-12 experience.
So to start a program like this, or to even continue a program like this, what are some of the hoops or steps that you have to take to actually make a program like this run in a school district?
You have to have a fantastic person who manages all behind the scenes. And Batesville chose Mandarin language because actually 1 in 5 people who walk the earth speak Mandarin. And that was a learning curve for me as a superintendent of Batesville. And also, even in today's political climate, we still do a lot of trade with Mandarin speaking countries, Indonesia, Singapore. So from the business community perspective in Batesville, they thought, well, let's teach our children Mandarin. And as they grow up and they do business internationally, having the ability to communicate bilingual, and also culturally understanding, there'd be an opportunity for students in Batesville to be business partners with Mandarin native speakers. Now, Mandarin is a level 4 language, and English and Spanish are level 1, and level 4 being a very complex language. So there is a lot you have to recognize symbols, you have to be able to read it, and you also have to be fluent in it. So for us to get quality candidates, we had to go to a lot of universities and teachers who come from China or Taiwan or Indonesia, and they have visas, working visas, or they're working on their green cards. So we have to help them kind of manage that process. And a lot of times their classroom management may be a little different than American classroom management in a more strict way, in a good way. The environment they grow up, again, that cultural awareness, the schools they grow up are very strict, very to the point, very business-like. So sometimes it takes us a little time to kind of, I don't want to use the word soften, but let them acclimate to our classrooms. And then we have the best of both worlds. We have very good class management with very good teachers who are native speakers of Mandarin.
So how many students in Batesville, I guess, how big is your cohort of students that participate in the Mandarin Dual Language Immersion Program? And what feedback have you received from those families and those students who are currently progressing through the programming?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Batesville takes a lot of pride in continuous improvement. And we started out, as I said, 50-50 model with 48 students, 24 and 24, and they would switch halfway through the day. And we started out, we knew there would be attrition. No matter what program you have, there is attrition. So we wanted to start out with an appropriate number, 48. That was year 1. Each year we would lose students, go 48, 44. And we thought, well, how do we evolve this to get to middle school and high school? And one thing, as we did standardized formative assessment, is we found out that our students could recognize Mandarin, they could read Mandarin, but they weren't fluent in it, because they were only spending half their day speaking the language. So we've kind of transitioned away from the 50-50 model, 48 students, and gone more to a 90% immersion with 22 to 24 students. So we kind of have a hybrid. We have kind of the initial cohorts that are still 50-50, and we have our new cohorts that are more 90-10. And the 50-50 model made sense to American English-speaking families because it's kind of a leap of faith. Like, well, I don't know if my student's doing well in Mandarin or not. But we have enough standardized tests now to show that our lack of our ability not to speak it fluently, we need to spend more time immersed in the language. Now, the beauty of this is that those students are immersed in the English language when they go to their specials, when they go to their playground to play with their classmates, and when they go home. So parents initially struggled with Mandarin homework, right? Because they weren't Mandarin speakers. So now the switch has been, we let the teacher teach Mandarin 90% of the time. Parents' expectations is to do the old school flashcards and read to them and speak the language, English language. And that's been a little more impactful for our fluency. So overall, K through 7, we have about 250 to 275 students who are enrolled in the Mandarin program, which is about 15% of our student population. So right now, again, as I said earlier, our cohorts in 6th and 7th or 7th grade, they're actually taking Chinese 1 for high school credit. And that's how far the program's progressed. So we got kindergarten students who are learning their colors in Mandarin to students who are in 7th grade who are actually earning Chinese credits.
Wow, that is awesome, especially with students in middle school taking Chinese for high school credit, because I mean, it's really hard just in English to take anything for high school credit. So to have them doing it in Mandarin is great. So how do the teachers work together? Your Mandarin teaching teachers and then your English speaking teachers. Do they co-teach in the same classroom? Do they teach on their own? Can you talk to us a little bit about how the actual teaching model looks like in Batesville?
Yeah, so the 50-50 model, those students are, those 48 students are split evenly throughout the day, AM and PM, and they kind of switch teachers, or actually the students change classrooms. So those co-teachers teach independent from one another, but they work very closely together to make sure the pacing guides, the curriculum guides, everything's moving at the same pace. And then, as you're probably well aware of, elementary schools usually are grade level teaming. So even though that some students are learning in Mandarin, they're still learning the Indiana academic standards. They're still in the same pacing guides. So there's a lot of teamwork, cohesiveness, either for the 50-50 model or the 90-10 model. Those grade level teachers are working together. And then there's the vertical alignment where we want to make sure that the kindergarten teacher hands off to the first grade Mandarin teacher. So again, very similar to the Carnegie Foundation, basically kindergarten to first grade to second grade, same concept, but the Mandarin teachers work horizontally with their peers and also vertically to make sure those benchmarks are met each year.
So if a superintendent was listening right now, what advice or steps will you say to that superintendent that they need to take to decide if dual language immersion is right for them, and then even which language they should choose for their dual language immersion program?
That's a great question. So I'll backtrack. So as a student-based decision, those 7th graders, when they go to high school, they would have the opportunity to take Spanish or American Sign Language. So they could almost be trilingual, triliterate. So they have that opportunity to learn those additional language if they choose to do that. If not, they're going to knock out their foreign language requirements, and they have more flexibility within their schedules in high school to do different things. So kind of the end result is students will have more flexibility in high school to choose what they want to do. I'll be honest, it's a heavy lift finding Mandarin speaking teachers and working through the visa process, but it's been a very rewarding process. The state of Utah, the Utah Department of Education actually manages their Mandarin dual language immersion programs. It's a very big program in Utah. Michigan State University have some great Mandarin speaking partnerships, and then in New Jersey. So there are pockets, North Carolina, there are pockets of Mandarin speaking dual language immersion programs, but they're kind of standalones. In fact, we're the only public school in Indiana who offers it. Typically, my colleagues look at either Spanish, and I've heard about someone doing a French dual language immersion, but Spanish typically is the choice. And I think you still get the same benefits: bilingual, biliterate, cultural, and also their brain just develops and they have a little more problem solving skills. And sometimes most often their test scores are higher. They're able to score higher in achievement tests.
So you talked a little bit about how one of the issues was the fluency of students in Mandarin. Are there any other drawbacks or challenges that you had to overcome in maintaining this program in Batesville?
Yeah, the biggest thing is educating parents because traditionally we're used to our students bringing homework home and we're able to help them do that homework. And it was just a learning curve for our parents that they really probably couldn't help learn or help their students do their homework. So we had to dial back. Our learning curve was we stopped sending a lot of homework home. And there's studies that say homework at any level is maybe, detrimental. So that was a learning curve. And that was, again, a switch to the 90-10 model. So more students had access to the professional, the teacher. And also we found out that families tend to kind of re-enroll students because one student will come home and he or she will speak Mandarin. A sibling will get in the program, and all of a sudden you're having Mandarin conversations in the back of the minivan on the way to baseball practice in Batesville, Indiana. So families have they're comfortable with this, and they understand that there's a lot of benefits to their children being involved with the Mandarin dual language immersion program.
Are there any worries from community members that this program, be it good as it is, that people will leave Batesville and not stay in the city? Is there any concern about that?
Yeah, you and I talked offline about rural Indiana. There's a talent drain in rural Indiana where sometimes our talented people go to the bigger cities, Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville. So again, there was some intentionality. We are fortunate in Batesville to have 2 publicly traded companies, and we also have the largest manufacturer of portable sawmills in the world, Wood-Mizer. They actually deal in 23 different currencies. So actually, maybe the opposite effect is Batesville kids are comfortable staying in Batesville, but do international work now that they've mastered the language.
Oh, that is awesome. What are I know the current cohort is in 7th grade. What are some immediate benefits that you all have seen in Batesville from this program?
I just think the cultural awareness and the understanding that it's not just the language that Chinese speak. Again, I said Singapore, Indonesia, a large population of Asia speaks language. Actually, one of our teachers is from Indonesia. One of our teachers is from Taiwan. Some of our teachers from Mandarin. So again, in Batesville, Indiana, rural Indiana, just that cultural exposure to other cultures has impacted not just the dual language immersion students, but our staff, our community, our other students. So there's been that kind of unintended positive consequence. There was a perception that DLI was for certain kids. We're opening up to all kids, whether they have an IEP. And some of our families are Hispanic or Indian, and some of those students will be trilingual. They're learning Mandarin. They speak Spanish at home, and they speak English to their peers. So again, just kind of that opportunity in small town USA to learn multiple language, have multiple perspectives, and again, just give our students an advantage when they graduate from Batesville High School.
What do support services look like for students who may have a ILP or an IEP who are also participating in a DLI programming?
That's some creative scheduling from our principals. We have amazing principals here at Batesville, but most of the time there are blocks of RTI for whatever that, you're well aware, RTI, response intervention, whatever those needs are, either some additional training in English, or maybe some high ability, or whatever that student needs. So if that student is in need, whatever their IEP or their RTI priority is, they get that time in the morning to start the day. And it also helps them commingle with their peers. Again, sometimes it's hard to be in the same class all day with the same students. So those RTI pods kind of help students kind of get out and again, utilize their English skills just in lieu of their Mandarin skills.
Speaking of that, so these students are in a cohort that travel together in all of their classes. So what does that look like for students? Do students ever want like some diversity in that? Like, how do you all manage that with the kids staying together so much of the time?
That was a learning curve for us, and it became apparent that it was important. Just like any school, you want students to intermingle because not all the friends are in the same DLI class, right? So there's opportunities outside. And again, full disclosure, there is attrition in the DLI program. Like you might start with 48, you might end up with 35. Sometimes parents and students find out it's not for them, and that's okay. We tell parents from day one, if it's not working out, we want you to explore other opportunities. But being in the same cohort, think about your two sons. Sometimes when you're together too much, sometimes there can be right, but sometimes you love each other even more. So we kind of get the best of both worlds.
And for those of you that are watching that don't know, I have identical twin sons, and one of the things I love to tell people, they are the best of friends, and sometimes they can be the worst of friends because they spend so much time together. And I don't have any other children, so it's just the two of them. So to Paul's point, that is understandable. Sometimes we want a little bit of a break for each other. So on the other end, we talked about students who need support. What about students who are high ability learners? What does that look like if you're in a DLI programming?
It's kind of organically built in to become bilingual, biliterate is almost sometimes those high ability skills are implemented, and they may learn just like a regular classroom. There may be that differentiated instruction. They may learn symbols and languages at a faster pace, or they may have more of a workload to kind of meet their high ability needs. But honestly, a DLI program almost inherently has a high ability component built into it. So that's been a positive. And again, to my colleagues out there, one of the benefits of that is sometimes our high ability numbers are hard to balance. And now we have our DLI program that meets some high ability needs, and we still have our traditional high ability program. And this class size and access to teachers, it kind of helps diversify what those students are exposed to.
And one of the aspects of being the superintendent or being a school principal is supporting new teachers. And so when you have teachers that are coming from China, from Indonesia, from Taiwan, what types of supports are that you have to think about putting in place to support them, not only within your school district, but also acclimating to a different country?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So we actually purchased a couple of small homes next to one of our schools. And sometimes they've come straight from a different country. We provide them kind of housing for up to 6 months to kind of help them get acclimated to the community. We've almost created a community within a community. Those dual language immersion teachers support each other, and they kind of share insights, how they figured things out, what the best way to do things. And a lot of them have children in our school, and you'll see them. They've assimilated into. They're just one of our staff members and family members, and they take their children to soccer practice and dance team. So again, they're just kind of that. We support them as much as we can. We make them feel valued, like we do with all of our staff members. But they feel comfortable knowing there are people there to help them assimilate, learn the culture. And honestly, they bring such a great joy to our school corporation. They bring a different perspective, a different energy. It's been a great partnership.
So as this program is matriculating, it hasn't reached your high school yet. What planning is happening right now to prepare Batesville High School for the cohort of students that are coming that's in the DLI program?
Yeah, so obviously longitudinal, we had to have a strategic plan. When parents invested in this program 8 years ago, what does high school look like? And we said, we don't know, but we're going to figure that out. But what we can comfortably say now is those students are going to knock out Chinese 1 and 2 for high school credits. Most likely, we're going to partner with a higher institution, just for example, could be a Ball State, and probably some kind of remote learning where those students will actually earn college credit in Mandarin Chinese because they'll be ready for that. So in theory, they could be sitting at Batesville High School as a freshman, taking a course at Ball State University, earning college credit for Mandarin Chinese.
Oh, that is awesome. What final advice do you have for people who watched this and said, hey, like, I want to do this program? What are some immediate next steps that you said, these are the things that you need to do next if you want to go on this path?
You just like any program, you probably need to find a trusted network of people who do it and ask them those questions like what works, what didn't work. There's a learning curve, and you have to dedicate one of your employees, one of your teammates to own the process, because there is a lot of back end work. But like anything else that's worth having, it's worth the time and energy to do that. It's a student-centered driven decision, and it gives families just a wonderful opportunity, and it's what's best for kids if they choose to do that.
Well, Paul, it is always great to chat with you and learn a little bit about all the wonderful happenings in Batesville, Indiana. And hopefully we'll be able to follow up with you when these students reach high school to see like where they are at a few years from now, which I'll know when that is because my twin sons are in 7th grade. So I will know exactly when that year of graduation comes for those students. So thanks so much. We will definitely share all the information. So if you're local in Indiana and want to connect with Superintendent Ketcham to learn a little bit more about his process and the work that goes into maintaining a dual language immersion program, we'll have that for you. And thanks again to Keep Indiana Learning for this series. And stay tuned for our next episode where we'll talk to another district leader about the dual language immersion program in their district. Thanks so much. And until next time.